Chinese culture has a history of thousands of years of economics. Whether it is the way of Confucius and Mencius or the schools of thought, they all emphasize hard work and thrift. For example, the Great Learning says that there are many who live, and few who use it. This is a major economic principle: produce more, and use less. Lao Tzu also said that I have three treasures: care, love, and love others. As I mentioned earlier, the clothes I wear are decades old, at least they still look clean and tidy. Your current clothes are very wasteful, and then you spend all your money on eating, drinking, entertainment, sensuality, tobacco, alcohol, whoring, and gambling. What kind of citizens are you in a country? Preface and postscript at the beginning of the 21st century. I often say that those who talk about economics in the industrial and commercial circles always focus on Keynes's consumption stimulates production, which is the worst economic idea. Yesterday I had a quarrel with Chen Fen. I said, "Chen Fen, the gift you sent for Mid-Autumn Festival, there are only 4 mooncakes, but the packaging, hey, is better than the packaging of the Palace Museum." This is the idea of consumption stimulating production, which is very wasteful. Look at the Mid-Autumn Festival and the Chinese New Year. The consumption of this packaging has piled up like a mountain, which is worth it? This is not economic thinking. If consumption is to stimulate production, it is best for human beings to fight every day. So you see, the United States is provoking wars everywhere, and wars are the biggest stimulus for consumption and production. Now, Americans have changed from Keynesian economic thought to advocate the latest economic thought, the so-called neoliberalism. You should study this neoliberalism carefully, completely stand on the standpoint of your own country, use economic weapons to rule the world, use money to control people all over the world, become imperialism, become an international economic warlord. What kind of culture is this? We have to think deeply. The objects in the world, whether it is oil, a piece of rice, a tomato, or a fruit, all things in the world are created for us, so don't waste them. The education we received when we were young, when we were eating, a piece of rice fell on the ground, and grandma was on it, looking at you, pick it up, eat. We just picked up the rice from the ground and ate it? The ground is still mud. Everything in heaven and earth is given to you for you to eat and use. If you spoil it too much, you will be guilty. This is called violent waste of things. He said that goods and all things should be discarded on the ground when they are evil, so don't waste them. You don't have to hide them from yourself. They are not owned by individuals, they are shared by everyone. This was thousands of years ago, the original economic thought. Lao Tzu has 3 treasures: it is said to be compassionate, it is said to be frugal, and it is said to dare not be the first in the world. These are the 3 treasures of Lao Tzu's thinking, and they are also the 3 treasures of political and economic thinking. Later, when Buddhism came in, it was called taking refuge in the 3 jewels of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The concept of the 3 jewels was borrowed from Lao Tzu. It's called compassion. Lao Tzu talked about loving kindness, Confucius talked about benevolence and righteousness, which is the great kindness and great compassion that Buddhism talks about. Compassion is the most difficult, that is to love everyone and everything. Said frugality, today our country, our nation, and our society are wrong to waste. The biggest serious problem now is excessive waste and failure to be frugal. Be it politics or economics, this frugality, how to be frugal, does not mean that there is no need for it. This is a university question. I dare not be the first in the world. When we talk about development now, if we talk about it according to Chinese culture, social development is for the whole people. Why do humans need wealth? How is wealth generated? How to use wealth? The only way to study this question is to study the history as a whole. Our education back then required a combination of classics and history, studying the 4 books, 5 classics, and hundreds of schools of thought, making historical comparisons at any time, and combining them for reference. The foreign economics books we read today are all the thoughts of these countries after the Industrial Revolution in the 17th and 18th centuries. You should pay attention to which country each economist is from, and which country he stands in. Everyone has his own position. Moreover, the thinking of people in that era was limited to that range. We have a classmate here who is a doctor of economics graduated from Stanford University in the United States. He introduced his teacher, a well-known old economist in the United States, and wrote a letter to me. I wrote back to him saying that in modern society, the whole world lacks an economic thought for all mankind. How will the future world and mankind be arranged? The economic thinkers of your country, those works are bandit thoughts. Because it is only from the standpoint of one country and one era. For example, the market. What is the market? The real market is that I have finished products and sell them to places without finished products. Places without finished products are backward areas, and backward areas are economic markets and commercial markets. To put it bluntly, this is economic aggression. Nan Huaijin lecture record. During the decades of the government of Wenjing, how did China stabilize such a poor society and political power, and make the industrial and commercial economy flourish? Only the word thrifty is recorded in history. These two words, we really read books, don't just read them. I used to do business too. When I was in trouble, my friends would tell me not to waste it. Of course I understand this. When I have money, I should spend it more slowly and less, which is called not wasting money. But at that time, I didn't have a dime at all, so why not waste it? The same is true of frugality. When the economy develops to a certain stage, whether it is an individual or a country, we must be restrained, not to get money everywhere to expand as much as possible. These are all problems, and the end of the problem is how many returning birds get lost in the nest, and they can't find their way. This is a problem caused by talking about the rule of Wenjing. So we study the business development at that time, find out these historical materials, and compare them with the present. There are many useful things. Just look at economics translated from foreign countries, such as business development, that is suitable for them. It may not be useful to us. It means that I often compare our habitual appetite of eating rice noodles to eating steak and burgers, and sometimes the stomach is not right. This is the same reason. Therefore, the government of Wenjing uses Taoist thinking and focuses on frugality. This is a big economic problem. I don't have time to find out all the information for you now. Talking about Chinese culture. Master's handwriting, I still owe a debt of poetry and books in my life, and everything must be left in the end. Recently, Allianz, the largest asset management company in Europe, released a major research report titled China's Challenge to the European Auto Industry. In this report, Allianz believes that because it has competitive advantages in almost all aspects of the electric vehicle industry chain, including power batteries, key materials, intelligent driving, etc., therefore, Chinese brands will seize the market originally belonged to European car companies, especially in the Chinese domestic market and the European market. Allianz also speculates that by 2030, due to competition from Chinese brands, sales of European car companies in the Chinese market will drop by 40%, and sales in Europe will drop by 10%, and the European auto industry will lose RMB 180 billion. Profits, the metal, plastic, chip, and other supply chains related to the auto industry will also lose 160 billion yuan. In other words, just because of the competition of Chinese auto brands, Europe will lose 340 billion profits. Of course, these profits did not disappear in place, but were transferred from Europe to China, and China will increase its net profit by 340 billion. At the same time, Schmidt, another European automotive research institution, believes that with the rise of China's auto industry, Chinese brands can not only compete for a global profit of 340 billion from Europe, South Korea and other countries compete for about 600 billion yuan in profits, adding up the two, the total new profits of China's auto industry, and its related supply chain, can reach as high as 1 trillion yuan, by 2030. What is the concept of 1 trillion profits? A profit of 1 trillion yuan means that the revenue it supports may be as high as 15 trillion yuan, the GDP created is about 8 trillion yuan, and the number of new jobs is as high as 6 to 10 million. Over the years, we have been insisting on industrial upgrading and manufacturing transformation, and many people do not take it seriously. After reading the above data, I think many people can understand the important value of industrial upgrading. An automobile industry that relies on industrial upgrading alone will create a total GDP of more than 10 trillion yuan in the future. It is not a problem at all to replace the overabuse of the real estate industry and become China's new economic pillar industry. In 2022, the GDP created by China's real estate industry is 7.38 trillion yuan. However, the profit margin of the auto industry is higher, and most of the money earned is from overseas. It can create more skill-intensive jobs with medium and high salaries, which is a huge boost to increasing national income and stepping out of the middle income trap. Just like the famous saying, the problems in development can only be solved by continuous development. If the common people want to live a good life and upgrade their industries, they must persevere for 10,000 years. Over. Click watching, good luck. The situation is getting worse. The United States and Russia released a nuclear war signal, and NATO issued an ultimatum to Russia. Nuclear war inevitable? With the siege on the front line of Ukraine, the United States and NATO feel more and more pressure. In particular, the NATO Secretary General revealed that after more than a year of Russia-Ukraine war, the arsenal of NATO countries has been approached. Exhausted? The Secretary General of NATO revealed that the ammunition is in a hurry, which also shows that although the United States and NATO have not participated in the war on the surface, they have actually joined the Russia-Ukraine war and are increasingly playing a leading role. However, what the entire West did not expect is that even with the strong assistance of the United States and NATO, Russia has not been defeated, and it has become more and more courageous in Ukraine. After experiencing the defeat of Kherson and Hunglyman in the early stage, Russia began to change its style of play and gradually stabilized its position after learning from the pain. Especially after winning Bakhmut, the Russian army continued to launch the Marinka, and the battle for Kupiansk began to shame Kharkov's defeat. If the fight continues in this way in Donbass, Russia will not be far away from winning Kharkov and Odessa. In the face of Russia's aggressive offensive, we see that the United States and NATO are completely impatient. The United States and NATO have not only begun to assist Ukraine with long-range cruise missiles, but even aiding fighter jets has become an inevitable option for the United States, and they have begun to train pilots for Ukraine. It can be seen that the United States has also begun to put all its eggs in one basket in Ukraine. What's more, in order to warn Russia not to play with fire, the United States openly announced that it would close the location of its nuclear missiles to Russia in retaliation for Russia's withdrawal from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. You must know that despite the tense relationship between the two nuclear powers, the United States and Russia, they still remain rational in the face of nuclear issues. Before that, the United States and Russia notified each other of the number of nuclear bombs and the location of nuclear missiles to gain mutual trust. After the war in Ukraine started, facing the siege of wolves in the West, Russia suddenly announced its withdrawal from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Senior Russian officials, including Putin, successively released signals that they would not rule out the use of nuclear bombs. Among them, NATO's participation in the war has become one of the conditions for Russia to use nuclear bombs, which means that if the United States and NATO participate in this Ukraine war, then Russia will use nuclear bombs. The United States, which has been continuously testing long-range cruise missiles recently, has suddenly announced that it will no longer notify Russia of the location of its nuclear missiles. At this time, NATO suddenly announced that if Russia uses nuclear weapons on the Ukrainian battlefield, nuclear radiation will endanger NATO countries, and NATO will be forced to participate in the war. This has also been interpreted by the outside world as NATO's ultimatum to Russia, telling Russia that if nuclear weapons are used in Ukraine, it will be regarded as a war against NATO, and NATO will be forced to join the Ukrainian war. The reason why NATO suddenly issued a warning to Russia to participate in the war is also because the Ukrainian front line has become more tense, and now Russia is a little impatient in the long-term battle in Ukraine, especially the recent guerrilla tactics of Ukraine breaking into Russia, which has caused great trouble to Russia. In addition, NATO countries insisted on providing Ukraine with long-range cruise missiles, fighter jets and other heavy weapons in disregard of Russia's warnings. Former Russian President Medvedev has repeatedly warned that Russia's patience has run out, and Russia may use nuclear weapons to end the Ukrainian war. Today, the United States has closed its nuclear missile position to Russia, and NATO suddenly announced that if Russia has nuclear weapons, NATO will participate in the war, all of which show that the game between the United States and Russia is becoming more and more intense, and the cloud of nuclear war hanging over Ukraine is getting thicker and thicker. Click watching, good luck. Mr. Nan Huaijin once said, "Prosperity and adversity are like 2 feet of a person. You have to rely on 2 feet to reach your destination. It is difficult to rely on 1 foot." Attitude. Since India's independence, the whole of Southeast